Freddie with Freetime Fun, and today we are going to be reviewing the installation of our 12-foot two-piece shuffleboard. We'll share some helpful tips and tricks along the way to make this installation process a lot easier. There are a lot of steps, but any handy person can certainly put one of these together. So stay tuned as we walk through each of the following steps. You're going to first start with your leg assembly. So for starters, you're going to take one part number 6 and one part number 8, and you will assemble it with bolt number 16 and washer number 17. Now you're going to repeat this process 3 times for each of the individual shuffleboard legs. One tip along the way, if you do have access to a power drill with a hex head, it will help expedite the installation process. Otherwise, the Allen key that does come with the shuffleboard will suffice. So for starters, you're going to make sure that the bottom side of part number 6 is facing you. From there, you'll take part number 8, center it on the pedestal leg, and you're going to insert bolts into each of the 3 corresponding holes on the underside. It's important to keep those bolts loose. Just tighten them finger tightness, until all 3 bolts are in each of the corresponding holes. And then once each of those bolts are tightened down, you can then secure them down before finishing with step 1. Once you have done that for all 3 legs, you will then flip over the leg pedestal and utilize part number 7 and use this as your top cap. From there, it will gently slide on top, and you will use the same washers as you did in step 1, washer number 17, and then bolt number 14. And you will thread that through each of the 3 holes and tighten down securely. The final step of each of the leg assemblies will be attaching each of the leg brackets to attach this to the cabinet in future steps. So you'll need 2 brackets for each of the pedestal of the legs. You'll want to make sure the L of the outside of the bracket is on the outside of each of these. And unlike the other steps previous to this, you'll want to make sure these bolts are only hand tightened. Kind of a tip along the way is if you have tightened these down where the brackets are not movable, you will want to loosen them. This will allow for adjustment when attaching each of these legs to the cabinet in future steps. Before you begin step 2, the manual is going to state to identify one cabinet half as A, one cabinet half as B. You'll notice each cabinet half is identical, so it doesn't matter which one is A or B. So just pick one and then use those moving forward throughout the future next steps of the installation. Assemble each of the cabinets. You're going to use one part number 2, one part number 3, a part number 4, and also a corresponding part number 4 here as well. So you're going to run 4 bolts finger tight on each of the side walls, on each of the long pieces, and then 2 bolts on each of the ends of the supporting braces. While you're doing this, make sure they are finger tight until the supporting pieces are in place, and then you can tighten down. Once everything has been tightened down, you'll then also put a wood screw into the center of each of the supporting braces, which will go into the bed of the cabinet for extra support. Once you have both cabinet halves fully assembled, the next step is going to be assembling each of the legs onto the respective cabinet halves. As a reminder, your cabinet base A is only going to have 1 leg. Your cabinet base B will have 2 legs along with the center support plate. On the cabinet base B, prior to installing the middle leg, it is critical to install the support plate first. The leg pedestal will cover the support plate, and these brackets will attach to each of the sides of the inner cabinet. After you've assembled all 3 legs, these should look like this. On one half, which is your cabinet base B, you're going to have 2 legs, and then your cabinet base A is going to have 1. The last step before flipping this thing over will be screwing in the leg levelers into each of the individual leg pedestals. And you simply do that just by simply rotating in and tightening all the way down. Once the table is finished in terms of installation, these can be adjusted to be leveled to your floor. Now, when you go to flip it over, this will require 2 people. So this is the time to get an extra set of hands to help flip that table over. Before flipping over cabinet base A and aligning it into cabinet base B, a helpful tip would be to pre-install the alignment dowel rods into the end of cabinet base B. You just simply slide those into the end, and after all 4 of those are done, it would also be helpful to slide on the decorative brackets onto the end of cabinet base B as well. That way, when you flip over cabinet base A, you simply have to align it and everything else will be ready to assemble. Once you have flipped over both halves and joined them in the middle flush, you will now secure both cabinets together by tightening down 4 bolts for the center support plate, and then the remaining 2 bolts on the underside to secure the leg to both cabinets. Once you have all of those finger tightened, go ahead down now and secure tightly. The next step will be to install the provided climate adjusters. The climate adjusters are mainly used to manipulate the shape of the play surface. The standard type of play is to have a slight bow in the center called concave, so the pucks aren't drifting off of the surface in gameplay. Now that comes down to personal preference, so you can manipulate that as you desire, but to install each of the 4 climate adjusters, you will align the 4 holes on the installation plates to the holes in the underside of each of the play surfaces. Again, as mentioned earlier, you can use the provided tools, or if you have the necessary drill bit attachments, you can use that as well. I would recommend finger tightening each of the 8 bolts on each of the climate adjusters prior to final assembly. The last step of the play surface assembly will be to connect both halves in the middle. You will be doing this with a series of different hardware, with connecting plates that will connect in these 3 areas, along with 2 longer connection rods as well. The most important part, and probably the most important part of this whole entire installation process, would be to ensure you are connecting these 2 halves on a completely level surface. My recommendation would be to level the cabinet and assemble it within the cradle. That way it's a little bit easier to work. It's less maneuvering of the play surface once it has been connected. The other option as well is to assemble these halves together on a level surface on the floor. But again, you'll want to make sure it's completely level to avoid any humps in the middle of the play surface where it connects. That would be the most important part. Final cabinet installation step will be to lock each of the halves in place together. So by doing that, you will tear back the carpeted section on each of the halves that is just Velcroed in place. You will then take the installation rod with a washer and nut on both sides and slide that into place and secure down. You will repeat the process on the opposite side as well to completely, again, lock these 2 cabinet halves in place. You have both play surfaces connected. You are ready to turn this over. If you did install the play surface in the cradle, a helpful tip would be, you'll notice on the underside of the cabinet there being pre-designated holes for the climate adjusters. What I would recommend would be to align the climate adjusters with those holes. That way there's less manipulation of the play surface as you flip it. So as we go ahead and flip it right now, we're going to turn it on its side, drag it back to us, and drop it into place. The last and final step of installation will be to connect the decorative side brackets. This covers the seam of both cabinets. So earlier we had already put this on to one half of the cabinet. So we'll just slide that into place, center it, and attach the 2 wood screws from underneath to secure that bracket into place. Once you do one side, you'll repeat the process on the other side, and you will be ready to play. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to reach out to us at freetimefun.com or give us a call at any time, and we'd be more than happy to walk you through the process.